everyone. I am Reverend Dr. Sherry Palace, and this week's show is on the deconstruction of your faith. This is part deux. It's the second part of our show that we had. We had the first one 2 weeks ago. We've got an amazing second panel. So thanks for joining us, and I'm looking forward to all of your comments and questions. If you are watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. If you are on Facebook, grant StreamYard your access so we can see your name when you comment or have a question. It's amazing if it works. But please remember to keep all comments and questions related to the show topic and that this is a safe space. I want to give a shout out to our top sponsors, Ruth, Kirsten, Michelle, Ray, and Heidi. Thank you so much for your generosity and support. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting it. Go to sherrypalace.com and use the support tab. There are literally dozens of ways to support me and the show. But just being here, welcoming us into your home, and joining this conversation supports me more than you know. I appreciate you. And because I appreciate you, I have a gift for you. This year, I am working with the Wild Goose Festival. It will be in North Carolina, July 13th through the 16th. We will be doing a live show there. If you want to go or plan on attending, I have a $50 discount code for you. Simply use my name, make sure you spell it right, and you'll receive $50 discount. You can find out more at wildgoose.org, and I would love to see you there. Okay, let's meet our guests. Carl and Laura Forehand were in ministry for 20 years. They went through a deconstruction and then left organized religion. They are authors and speakers who founded the Desert Sanctuary. Their book is Out into the Desert and is an honest evaluation of organized religion and the 21st century. Welcome, Carl and Laura. How are you?
Good.
We're dropping things here while we're coming in.
Yeah, that's the whole spirit of the show anyway. Next, we have Richard Murray. Richard's passion is delving into all practical issues regarding the nature of God's goodness. Through recapturing of the early church fathers' Christological hermeneutics, Richard believes that all apparent literal difficulties from the Old Testament scriptures can be readily and coherently explained without ever attributing wrath, darkness, or violence to the divine nature. Richard's an attorney with a BBA and a JD from University of Georgia and an MA from Regent University School of Divinity. He has written several books, including The Jesus Mood, Discovering the Treasure of Imperative Faith, and God versus Evil, Sculpting an Epic Theology of God's Heroic Goodness. Welcome, Richard.
Hi, Sherry. Good to see you.
Glad to have you here. And last but not least, we have my favorite, or infamous, heckler. Mike Zenker began pastoral ministry in 1990 and has served as senior pastor of Hope Fellowship Community Church in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada since 2003. Mike launched a Growing in Grace mini-series Canada in 2006, which is teaching and training ministry focused on identity in Christ and understanding forgiveness. Mike's trials in life have helped him on the journey of unlearning religion and discovering greater grace. He serves as a fire department chaplain, long-term care health chaplain, providing hope, love, and light to all those walking through dark times. Welcome, Mike.
Hey.
So this is show 2 to an absolutely phenomenal show previously. And I know that we have all different points of view on this one. So I can't wait to delve into what do you guys see as far as a catalyst of deconstructing your own faith. Carl and Laura, you guys are up top, so let's go with you first.
So what was the catalyst to deconstruction? Yeah, the thing that triggered mine was when we had a group called Bikers Against Trafficking at our church. I was the pastor and I was hosting them. They had a lady that had been trafficked by her father for years.
Oh, wow.
And it's it went from bad to worse. And she explained all that in graphic detail. But the thing that got me was before it started, she kind of pulled me aside on stage and said, my question is, God was there every night when that was happening. Why didn't he do anything about it?
Oh, wow.
So that kind of, set me off balance, and I didn't have an answer for her. And so I just started on a quest to ask questions. And that's where the road took me, was on further down the road of deconstruction to what I would call evolution now. That was the trigger, or that's what started it.
Yeah, I guess for me, it was more, I just was not seeing a clear distinction between the way the church treated people and the way society treated people. I thought there was supposed to be a clear difference, right? And I wasn't seeing it. So it just raised a lot of questions for me. Kind of like Carl in a way, I just couldn't understand this God that on Sundays was preached about as, unconditional love and, all the good things. And then, just to see the way the church treated us during our history and just how the church responds to those things that are in our culture and in our society just left me with a lot of questions.
And that's why they don't like questions, right? Mike, what about you?
Well, one of the first things that started my journey, and this term deconstruction is a newer term. It's not, it's a buzzword right now, and there's gotta be better words. But I would say almost 20, 25 years ago, I was actually reading a book by Bob George, Classic Christianity. And for the first time, I found out I was forgiven. And I thought, what? Because my upbringing taught me that I have to ask for it. And if it's going to be, it's up to me. So I have to stay forgiven up by continually. So that was the beginning of unlearning. And I was a pastor for 7 years at that point.
Wow.
So it's like, what? And so, I guess since then I've been unlearning and questioning so many things. We're never allowed to question things growing up, and now I'm questioning everything. So that's kind of where it's been. And then at different stages of life, different things come up that I'm forced to revisit. Stuff that I thought I'd figured out. Now, wait a minute, I gotta visit this one now. And so it's just been a constant journey. So, yeah.
I too have been doing it for about 25 years, and things that come up, I was like, wow, same. I thought that was over, or I thought I had covered that, or I didn't even know that was linked back to the religious beliefs. It truly is an onion.
When people say they've deconstructed, I'm thinking,
yeah, right?
It's a false concept.
It's like an 18-year-old saying you're an adult.
I know. Anyway.
Technically you are, but not really. Richard, how about you?
For me, it would go back to the early 90s when I went to the Toronto revival, and I had a deep, deep connection with God during a time of soaking prayer in that, and received a revelation out of that. And it was just an experiential knowledge of God's nature. And in the wake of that, the dominoes started falling. Because to me, it was just about honoring God's nature. And I fell in love with God. I fell in love with Jesus. And the God that I fell in love with, there's no way that these things could be attributed to him, which are so commonly attributed to him. So I just sort of knocked down one at a time over the years, hit one topic at a time, studied it, dived into it. I don't believe that you can always get a precise answer on everything, but you can get a rough answer, a general answer, enough of an answer to hang a hat on of hope, and to know, well, I may not know the dynamics of why this particular thing happened at that particular time to this particular person, but I do know one thing, that God is good, and Jesus didn't want to get caught up in what caused the man's blindness. He said, let the glory of God be revealed. That's what he actually said in the Greek. Let the glory of God be revealed. Nonetheless, let the glory of God be revealed. So I think that's the key to a lot of it. But having been in it since then and sort of gone through, deconstructing Baptists, from deconstructing charismatic to deconstructing Word of Faith guide, to deconstructing early patristic, study, I've come to the point where I really see it as detaching ourselves from the hive mind. Every one of us, we bought into groupthink, a particular groupthink, and there may be different flavors of it, but each of these groupthinks have a particular list of presumptions, and they're presumptions we've never questioned and never examined and never vigorously entered into. And I think at the end of the day, what we're deconstructing from is groupthink, a hive mind that limits us and that constricts us. So, but yet at the same time, we're looking for a mind of unity, the Ephesians unity between the two of us. And, between not the two of us, between all of us. And that's what we're looking for. That's not a hive mind. That's the Spirit of God. That's the body, the body, the Christ, the union, every ligament working together. And that's the unity we're looking for. But these hive minds come in. And that's what Jesus was attacking, the hive minds. The only people he was ever rough with were the hive minds of the Pharisees. He when they grouped up, that's when he lambasted them, not individuals. So anyhow, that would be it to me, just to detach ourselves from any hive mind that's constricting our faith.
Well, I realized a couple of years ago that literally every group of people has a leader, people who support that leader, someone who no one wants around, someone that everybody accepts for being an asshole. In literally every group, whether you're talking about school, work, friendships, churches, all of those things. And the difference between those things and what should be a church is that the church is supposed to be different. And when you see that the church is the initiator of the shame, the division, and all of those things, I think that's what starts it. I mean, as a child, I loved Jesus. He was my imaginary best friend. And then when I saw just abhorrent behavior from my mother, from people at church, it was like, whoa, that's not the God I knew, and I don't want anything to do with that God at all. So when you have those different types of beliefs, I think the believers actually send people into deconstruction more than a relationship with God. Have any of you found that?
100%.
Yeah.
My whole experience at church was just the absolute vileness and just people literally trying to, get Carl out of the church by any means necessary. That could have been through me. That could have been through something that, I did that was very innocent, but was blown out of proportion. I've been ignored in churches. I've been, just basically treated as if I wasn't there. It was very lonely and very isolating for a place that, comes across as a place of healing. I did not experience that at all in our 20 years of ministry.
I found that even in the long years of pastoral ministry I've done, there was always somebody getting in trouble for stepping outside the box. Some radical teacher, radical speaker. Mike Yankinelli was pretty wild back then. But even in my own denominations, there were individuals, somebody was leading a charge without even knowing it because they were asking the questions. And it created the permission for us to ask questions. So if we didn't have examples in our churches and denominations, there were a few occasionally. So there was glimmers of hope, but we didn't recognize them. Looking back, I can now see, oh my goodness, now I know what that guy meant. Oh my goodness, I so agree, because I disagreed back then. I don't know if you guys saw that in your world too, but I'm pretty sure you did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Go
Richard.
ahead, Richard.
I was just going to say that I think this groupthink that we're talking about, it's always either going to be fear-based or wrath-based in order to control us, and that's why the operative dynamic that limits us and that we need to deconstruct from is the wrath. Three things, I think: the wrath, fear, and then indifference. Okay, I see those dynamics working in particular group things. You know, and indifference is that you're not curious about anything, and it's sort of the presumption is just listen to us, sit there, don't think anything, just listen to what we tell you and go along with what we say. But then this ugliness we've talked about, we're saying it's all fear driven. You know, if somebody's asked or ignored at church, it's because they present, that they're out of conformity, and we mustn't allow that. Because the fear is something bad's going to happen if we allow it. What Mike described and Carl, I mean, I think it would astound us, and it does astound us because this is part of the deconstruction thing, to realize how much of what we thought before has come from a place of fear, dread, wrath, fear of God's wrath, blame shifting to everything onto Him, and not having a coherent understanding of what it means, what Jesus stood for, and how He relentlessly went around doing good and healing all who were oppressed of the devil because God was with Him.
Yeah, but everything you just said is a sheep mentality, and we are told to become sheep. I mean, we're literally told to not think, have Jesus be your shepherd, be sheep. And as a child, I asked my mom why, and she gave me a negative connotation for it by saying that sheep are mindless and they will walk off cliffs together. And I was like, oh, okay, then that's why we need Jesus. But to take that analogy and that metaphor and say this is what you should be, I think comes from a fear of deconstruction, a fear of questions, a fear of please don't dive deeper into this faith because it might fall apart.
Yeah,
Our assessment, what we talk about a lot is that the church is an organization, and in an organization, the organization always comes first. In a church, 70% of the money that's spent is spent on salaries and building. So there's very little left for ministry. That's also the way they do their time. The time is all focused on that show on Sunday morning and around evangelism and things like that. Very little time left over to minister to the quote unquote sheep in the congregation. We come in with this trauma, this unaddressed trauma, hope, hearing that all you need is Jesus and He'll just take care of it. It's going to be, it'll be a done deal. But then, how much intimate time do you have with someone that's just listening to you at church? The opposite is true. We listen to a person, we hear a concert, we sometimes go to small groups, but those small groups don't usually address those needs we have. So the corporation, the institution, no matter, even if you're a 100-member church, it's still an organization. There's still an inner circle that leads that. And it's not that I go on Sunday morning and we ask questions and answer each other's questions and encourage each other. It's that one person says the easiest way to maintain this organization is what Richard was talking about, fear and worry, and creating that anxiousness so that we can solve it with our very, very simple rules or whatever.
And here's what I know, like with all the inner work that I've done, is that I can see, that yes, it was based in fear and they maybe saw me as, stepping outside the box or whatever, but that still left a lot of wounds and a lot of trauma. And I don't think I'm just going to gloss over that, if that makes sense. I'm not going to give the church a pass because now know, okay, well, they're operating out of fear and they're an organization. There's still trauma there. There's still, I mean, that's real.
Yeah, understanding it doesn't excuse it in any way. Right. And the irony is that the church is supposed to be a community, right? We're supposed to come together where two or more are gathered in my name. But we end up going and sitting in the pews, watching someone speak, say hi to your neighbor, send them love. God, I always hated that. Hated that. And then you're lectured and then you go. There's very little community that the current church fosters, in my opinion. Mike, you look like you were chomping at the bit. What do you got to say?
I think it's really easy for those of us that have been hurt by what we call the church to let people think that is the church when it's really not the church. It's your journey, your path. I like how Paul Young says that these are my people, and he doesn't disengage himself from the tribes that he was a part of. And I thought that was extremely wise, because the more we create us versus them in our terminology, we're actually not helping things. We're creating a whole new division that is not helpful. And
that's my problem with the church, though, is they always have to have a them. Yep. So really good point.
Yep. And I think as far as the journey where I'm learning to be softer and a little more gentle, it's revealing I'm healing. Those that are not as healed are harsh and haven't processed some things yet, and yet they'll make it a platform and they create more fear, unnecessary fear. So I think we don't have to be as afraid to enter this journey or agree to this journey the Holy Spirit could be taking us on of unlearning, of taking apart those pieces, those that were thrown into our box. In fact, last Sunday I was talking about this idea, trying to find another word for deconstruction, but it's like a voting box where we've been given a theological box, and as we grew up, Sunday school teacher put a theology piece in, your pastor put in, your family, all these pieces were thrown into your box, and that's your theology, but you've never opened it. You've never did some house cleaning, and suddenly now you're wondering why you're having a hard time. You start to pull some of the pieces out and go, that shouldn't have been, who put that in there? And you realize, wait a minute, there is a much better hope-filled perspective that we've just not been made aware of. So
and I think a curative aspect of all this I may be oversimplifying it, but I hope I'm not, is just getting a coherent and honorable view of God's nature. I think if we truly understand God's nature and we start relating to everything through God's nature, it will cleanse us and it will purge us and it will course correct us, which I think is going on what we're talking about here. It's the Lord's nature that's led us out of this. It's not a revelation of man. It's a realization that the God we serve and the God we love and the God we call Savior is not consistent with much of what is being portrayed as Christianity, institutional Christianity. It's inconsistent with it, and it berates, it's bone on bone. It does not match. And I think that, the magnificent calling that we have is to confess the name. And, in the Hebrew concept, that name meant the nature. So if we confess the nature of Jesus, if we understand the nature of Jesus, that in itself will help to start correct us. And Tozer said that there's by a secret law of the soul that we grow to resemble the image of God that we have. Whatever image of God we have, we grow to resemble it.
Totally.
It's true north. We head that way. So I think if we can, and that's what's going on through all the deconstruction of hell and through the deconstruction of wrath and through the deconstruction of God being the smiter and the oppressor, and all of these things, that as those things are being decompressed, you're seeing people free. They're set free from this hive mind, and they're trying to connect with the real Jesus. And the thing about the sheep that you were mentioning is the shepherd is Jesus. It's not the institution.
Yeah.
And because they operate by fear. And the one thing that I have never felt from the Lord is any element of fear. Everything that I've felt from has been encouraging, fortifying, It's been corrective. I'm not saying that, but in terms of it being fear-based, he was revealing that he's in my corner, trying to help me and heal me and prompt me and lead me and woo me and win me and renew me, and just knowing that, and not just knowing it on the surface, but internalizing that does a lot of healing. And I think if, as Paul said, that he may be preeminent in all things, that's my prayer in all this deconstruction. And that's why some deconstruction is worrisome, because it moves away from the preeminence of Christ. It moves Christ to the margin. He's not even mentioned hardly. All right.
But I think that deconstruction is very similar to the 5 stages of grief. And I think that people sometimes just like in their grief process, get stuck at the anger. But a lot of people deconstruct and throw it all away. They become atheists, whether they be angry or happy atheists, but it is all gone. Some go full circle like I did, although my definitions of God have nothing to do with religion now. So where do you see, as far as people landing in different spaces in their deconstruction journey? I mean, we hope that as you deconstruct, you become more loving, you become more hopeful, you get rid of the shame and the animosity and the fear. But some people don't. Some people don't get through that. Some people want to stay angry. They want to use that as their deconstruction. What do you guys all have to say about that?
Well, if it doesn't look like love, I don't think it's real.
There you go. I like that one, Mike. Carl, what were you going to say?
What I keep thinking is don't, Richard talked about getting our beliefs right, and getting that. But as those begin to happen, one of the things you can't ignore is, you said some people become atheists and some become, I vote for us not becoming anything. That will keep the question part open-ended and keep asking the question. Mm-hmm. And you'll see, if you stay out here, what we call in the desert long enough, you'll see that people kind of wander back and forth and their paths overlap. And you'll see that happen. You see kind of a coming together. But the moment you draw a circle around it and say, I figured it out, then you're going to start defending what you know, and you'll stop learning and you'll stop growing. And the important part, I think, about deconstruction more than anything else is this: once you begin to change those beliefs, you assume I'm better now, right? I'm done, I'm fixed, I'll go back. Well, you can't ignore that there's a mess to clean up. There's trauma. There's psychological problems, there's issues. There's no getting around it, that it's hard, it's painful, but it's worth it. And you got to do the work to get better. And if it's not your fault that it happened, if you want to be better, there's some work to be done, is all I would say.
Always.
Well, the only thing I would add would just be that the danger, there's dangers in everything. We can't sit there and say certain things are not dangerous. Everything becomes dangerous at some point. If we do lose the balance, and if we do lose the openness and the evolutional learning.
Extremes are dangerous.
Yeah. And but I think just something that I've seen in some deconstruction is that they end up revolving around negative energy, and while others tend to orbit around positive energy. And when I say negative energy, I mean just naysaying everything. That's not true, that's false, that's false, that's false, that's false, that's false. And there's a place for that, and there's a season for that. And occasionally we all need to engage in that. But there's also this aspect of, well, this is true. Whatever things are good, virtuous, of good report, think on these things. And I think that we want to ultimately get to a place where we orbit around positive energy, because Jesus's energy was incredibly clean and incredibly positive and incredibly uplifting. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. And that is, I don't want to sit in the seat of the naysayer and or the scoffer and just scoff at everything and say everything's wrong, everything in church is wrong, everything in that is wrong. I mean, we're all works in progress. We all see through a glass dimly, but I do think that the positive energies of God are what we're seeking, and that's what's going to really grow us, exponentially grow us.
Yeah.
So just to be aware of the energy, what type of energy, not to get too bitter, you know. And I understand that maybe healing and part of that's working through that, and I get that. But ultimately, you know, there is a positive energy and a negative energy, and I think we just need to.
Yeah, and that goes with every circle, right? I don't want to be around people who are always like, this sucks. You know, I'd rather be around positive people. So maybe that's a personality type that we see in deconstruction, or maybe that just causes further healing. Carl,
I think maybe it might be a phase. It might be a part, you know, for every place you get to, you have that anger. But also, don't forget that a lot of times what you're doing is advocating for other people. We feel like our group has been seated kind of just outside organized religion, and that's where we set, you know, welcoming people, but also occasionally you have to speak up for other people, and sometimes that's like a protest. It's not necessarily, you know, church words and bless your hearts and things like that. So sometimes that conflict has to be there for things to change, right? I mean, we have to work against each other, or it won't ever change. I mean, anyway, I'm rambling. Sorry.
Oh, rambling. That's what the show is. We're rambling on this great topic. I love it. Something I have friends that come from traditional church backgrounds. I happen to be in a church. So I'm kind of an oddball in this deconstruction journey, that I'm still a pastor. Like, that's just weird still. And I've got a safe enough place where I'm allowed to explore and process this with a group of folks who are eager to learn as well and unlearn. And so they've taught me about being gentle. They've taught me about being careful with us versus them statements, calling out names of individuals publicly. It's like, don't, because that's the language of shame that the church has used forever. And we're moving away from that. And we're shedding layers of skin that was never really us anyway. It's very much like the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. In that book, there's a story of the dragon is by the water and he wants to jump in. And the lion says, I got to undress. You got to undress first. So he tries to take a scale off. And suddenly there's all the scale. And he's about to jump in. Then he realizes he has another layer of skin and keeps doing that. And finally the lion says, you know what? I'm going to have to do it for you. I'm going to have to take that off. And with a big, sharp swoosh, the talons go deep into that dragon skin. It's painful. Off comes the skin. And suddenly this little boy with really red skin, because it's hurt, and is there. And he lifts the boy and throws him in the water. And it hurts at the first splash, but then, oh, so cooling. I think we have more layers than we possibly dreamed of when it comes to unlearning. I thought that story has helped me in my emotional journey of healing from stuff that's happened to me. But I just saw the bridge that it's a similar journey for those that are unlearning and are dealing with wounds from the church and have been taught some faulty concepts. Or, in fact, I'll use the word incomplete now. I think we have incomplete teaching that needs more. And we have to become teachable to realize there are more historical messages, more orthodox, if I can use that word carefully, that go way back, a theology that goes way back to the early church fathers that has been there the whole time, and we weren't told about them. So,
well, because they didn't serve the agenda.
Correct.
Did you have you guys seen The Whale?
No.
I want to do a show on that. I suggest all of you watch that movie.
I'm ready to watch. I have it ready, queued to go.
Man, I'm
watching women talking right now.
Okay, but there is a deconstruction subplot to that movie.
All right.
And when Carl mentioned the anger, there was a point that I literally screamed, "Oh, no, you don't, motherfucker," in that movie. And I'm actually next month, I'm going to be having a show on righteous anger. So I want to clarify that there is a difference between angry because you were hurt and the trauma and those types of things, and anger where you're going to fix things, the righteous type of anger part of deconstructing. Do you guys experience that at all?
Well, I think there's cultural baggage to that too. Like where you live, like you're in the US, it's a very different type of anger. Where you have somebody in South Africa, very different kind of anger. You have somebody in England, in the Middle East, Canada, where, you got to realize your culture also plays into your conditioning.
Okay. Like the evangelicals versus the Baptists is what you're saying, Mike? Like that type of thing?
It's close, but I'm talking I'm talking about your culture, the culture of your land. It's like a personality type, but like the U.S. and Canadians will. There's some fun joking between the differences of us, right? Yeah. We're just so nice, and
I was gonna say you guys are much nicer than we are.
So that's what I'm talking about. There's just a cultural change of tone. Where in England it's very private, and they don't argue much. They get angry differently, and versus more of Hispanics, man, they know how to be energetic and live their emotions. The Africans, they know how to be expressive. So again, being angry, the culture has to be recognized from where you're speaking about, not just about these topics. Your heritage plays into how you express that.
Could that also be true based on your family of origin, not necessarily just from another country? Or
absolutely. Oh yeah, all of it, the whole package. It's not so.
I mean, I agree with that.
Yes.
Part of the reason we have issues with anger is because anger in and of itself is our body trying to tell us that something's wrong, and we subdued that in the church. Love one another, forgive quickly, and we bypass issues and things like that. And then people don't think it's holy to be. Sometimes it is holy to be angry. When you see an injustice, when someone's trying to hurt you, things like that. And until we feel that, I feel that because I'm angry that so many lives were treated badly. So many things happened that hurt people. So I'm angry about that. I think that's kind of natural. And then when you deal with the trauma we have left over, that anger comes up again. And until we feel it, it won't heal it. It's got to be experience. It's trying to tell us something. It's trying to heal from past trauma. So, sometimes we're being so good that we injure people. We're being so nice. We call it Midwest nice here. We're being so nice. We don't speak honestly to people and things like that too. So, I know what anger sometimes leads to, but it's not always bad.
Well, what I was referring to,
what fuels, and for me, a lot of times what it fuels is, diligent effort, talking to people and things like that help.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sherry was talking about, you were talking about righteous anger. So what I was referring to, because I've heard arguments, I've been in church meetings where they try to say you can't be angry, and that's not right at all. But then people use the right, or they think they have the right to be right, and they're angry about not being listened to. So they misuse the anger. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, it's
culture
true too.
Plays a role into it. But this also plays into this whole journey of unlearning, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm triggered by stuff, and for the early part, for certain topics, I was really upset. And what's the right word? I was probably harsh or short with certain people from certain backgrounds because I was just so angry with that background. But now my heart's softened a lot more. I've done some healing. It just reveals the journey. I'm not done. I'll be triggered by other stuff that I'm not even aware of yet. So to know that it's okay,
Yeah. And I think we do need to give each other room to be angry, because it's human to be angry, and not judge, not try to correct someone. Just bear with us, mourn with those who mourn, rejoice with those who rejoice. I know in my own case, when I look at my own anger, it's usually in my situation because I'm impatient and I'm in control. I'm trying to control the situation. And my response is, and I'm not saying that's the only form of anger. I agree with Carl. There's different forms of anger, but that's a particular deadly one. And I think that's why, a lot of institutional people may get angry, because they lose control. They're worried about losing control of the congregation, losing control of the playing field, losing control of the agenda. And I think that the less judgmental we become, a lot of anger filters away, just because what you think doesn't impact me. If we were each secure in our beliefs. And of course, it's we can all stumble in many ways, as James said. That's true. But just if we give each other elbow room to think freely, as long as it's pitched toward light, and I understand we've got to go through some darkness and through the valley of death and all that kind of thing. But I just think anger in my situation, and I know in many people that I know situation, is because they lose control. They feel they're losing control over a situation. And that may be another way of saying, something's not right here, but it's processing it the right way. These are good things for us to introspect about. We're on our own work and starting with ourselves and working outward.
Yeah. And I initially, like when I started realizing that the Bible was actually errant, and not literal, I was angry because I felt lied to. I was angry because I felt that agendas were pushed at the cost of my heart or my family or the ones that I loved. When I discovered and learned and all of the things as to why those things happened, it did give me a little bit more empathy. But it also, the anger kind of subsided as far as, okay, well, they just, they did the best they could, those types of things. But when I felt lied to, when I felt conned and scarred because of it, that anger was deep. And that anger lasted, I would say, a solid 7-8 years. It was not something that I could get past or even look at someone and go, you know what, I'm not going there again because of that. And ironically, in studying and trying to find some type of truth, it brought me back to a superior essence, a superior energy, the energy of love. When I had said, no, absolutely not. I'm never walking in another church again. It's all bullshit. But because I persisted, because I kept saying, I know there's something out there, I have felt it, is how I was able to come full circle and go back to, okay, I want to know and be the Jesus that I knew as a child, the one that just loved me completely. It is a healing circle.
Do you ever find that some of the topics that people are upset at us about, they call us angry, but there's no other way to call out some of these topics without a passion that sounds angry, but really it's like, I see the pain that topic is causing. Exactly. The trauma continues to cause. I've seen it, I've felt it, and so I'm calling it out, and yet I appear angry to somebody. How do we balance that? Like that's a topic in this deconstruction.
But you know what? It's there. It's an uncomfortability. As a woman, as a loud woman, as a woman who will not keep her mouth shut, I see that in all aspects of my life. So they just don't want you to ask those questions. They don't want to have those conversations. If they did, we wouldn't be labeled as angry. Black women, angry. Women talking, angry. It's a way, in my opinion, it's a complete dismissal.
Yeah, because how should I sound when I'm angry? What should I sound like when I'm angry? We particularly squash that in women, and especially Black women. and then we start labeling them because they're loud or because they're disagreeing with us. So,
well, and if we were being honest, because I'm a criminal defense attorney, and I see domestic violence court. I'm in domestic violence court every week, and guys, we need to bend over backwards to not appear angry. All right. Because we have abused that in the past through misogyny and through racism and through white man, supremacy type of thing. And even though we need to be more introspective about it because of the abuse that we've done in the past. So I think, I totally agree. I think the people that have been trampled on, they need to work some things out of their system corporately, and that's fine, and find their freedom. And for every repression we've imposed on others, we need to shut our mouths and back up and just listen to the anger that past generations that we've caused, from the male, from the white male perspective. I mean, I'm trying to own that because I see the damage that we've done. So to see how these domestic violence counselors, how they deal, because 90% of the people in domestic violence court are obviously men. All right, but when you see these men go up there, and they're like cavemen, they've never been taught better. They've never been taught how to regulate their anger. They've never been taught how to, how not to be reactive but responsive, type of thing, and how to leave the room. And I tell you, it's blessed me. I mean, I'm not, I'm there listening to these hints about how they avoid, exploding in anger. I mean, it's really helpful from the male, from the male psyche. We need it. We need it.
Yeah. Emotional intelligence is through it all.
Yeah, that's being responsible, and the other part to that is what I was talking about before. Do the work to find out what's below the anger, so that we, exactly like you said, so we can respond instead of react. And that's where the hard work comes in. I think sometimes, like you said, just to shut our mouth, but not to suppress that anger and keep causing problems, but to figure out, why am I angry?
Me saying what I did out loud, screaming at my TV during the whale, totally justified. 100% justified. It was very triggering, obviously, for me to verbally say that. But that is the type of thing where I go, you know what, you're not going to hurt people anymore. You're not going to destroy lives like this anymore. And then go from there. Before we close out on this, anything else? I have one more question. What is the number one thing that you would say to someone who has just started deconstructing? Carl, we can go first.
So I say this from experience. We've done 240 episodes of the Desert Sanctuary. We've listened to that many stories at least, including all the other people that kind of come up. And one of the most common things in the people that are succeeding in what we call the desert, whether that's you're still in a church or whether you're wherever you're at, with that it's that journey. One of it's really two things, but what they say the most is things really started to change for me when I went inside where the kingdom of God supposedly is. I went inside and I learned to trust myself. And maybe there's 100 other steps around that, but more than anything, those two things are the people that are succeeding. It's not easier work. It's not less dramatic and hard, but the ones that are succeeding, they go inside and they start learning to trust themselves. And a whole new world opens up for them.
Mm-hmm. I think I think for me, it's like find people who will believe your story and who are willing to sit with you no matter what. They're not trying to fix you. For me, that's literally Carl and my sister. I don't have this big, huge community, and I'm okay with that because these are people in my life that I can sit and I can cry and I can be angry and I can show a spectrum of emotion, and they're just there, right? They just sit with me in it. There's no judgment. And they believe me. They may not have had the same experience as me, but that doesn't matter. They believe me anyway, and they allow me to process wherever I am. So if that means that today I'm angry about something because I was, triggered, or I'm sad and I'm crying and I'm yelling, or I'm saying, fuck you or whatever, then he always laughs when I say that. I know.
Sherry's show.
I was looking
okay.
right at you when I said that, Sherry. But that they're not going, and then there's like these people, these basically two people in my life, there's no judgment. I can say what I need to say, and there's validation in their eyes. And that's not, they're also not allowing me to just stay in that angry place, but they're allowing me to process. And I just think that for so many years, I was silenced and not allowed to process. And so do I sometimes still get triggered? You bet. And I'm not going to apologize for that. But I'm a work in progress until the day I'm no longer breathing. And I'm okay with that.
A safe space is definitely needed. Mike?
I would say to them, they're not alone, and that they don't have to be afraid of what they'll find when they enter this wardrobe. They're gonna find hope. There are more hope-filled perspectives that they have not been told. In fact, if they hear something new, it's not new at all. It's just new to them, which is a big difference. I didn't know that. This sounds like new teaching. It's not, it's old. And so to know that there are many, many others also on the journey of asking better questions because now they're ready for it. Because people think they start this deconstruction. They don't. It finds you. And I think it's Jesus in you. I think it's the light already in you, the kingdom of God in you. That is what's drawing and creating the hunger. My friend Bruce Walkup in Australia, he's a doctor, medical doctor and teacher, and he said, if what you're learning isn't making God bigger and better, and I add on, and if it's not helping you see humans and love others better, you're not doing it right. And so I think if the journey is showing us, and by the way, you might come to a place where you have to mess that all up for a time. You might come to a place of darkness where, oh no, I don't believe any of this stuff. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's part of the journey. And whoever's in you as your life will guide that. And you're being forced to process all this stuff. That might be the layers coming off, right? Who knows? So I don't let fear run it, and just trust the one who guides you.
Yeah, I had to stop using the word better because it was so vague and could be used in so many different ways. I actually heard a mother of an LGBTQ child, they had just disowned that child and said, this is, I'm making them a better person. So I dropped better and put love as much as I can. If it's not making you a more loving person, run. I guess Carl lost his internet connection. So Richard, what do you think? What's the best advice that you could give someone?
Well, just that Jesus is in the room. When we talk about giving people space and giving others space, in my deconstruction, I've gotten to know Jesus better because it's primarily starts off with the two of us. And I've learned he's given me space to judge others. But then as I've committed to this deconstruction and being true to his nature, I've come to hear him give me that space, and I'm appreciative of it. All right, he's let me go off on this tangent and that tangent, and didn't come in there and slap me in the head or anything, but he was with me, and that's the very same way we're supposed to be with everyone else. And Jesus is in the room, and
not in my bedroom. Please say he's not in my bedroom.
Jerry.
But we're we're detaching from the things that people try to mediate. These hive minds that we were talking about earlier, just these toxic emotions, they often come in and obstruct our relationship with the Lord. But when we refuse to accept these as divine attributes, then it helps our thinking. You're going to, as you proceed through this thing, you're going to know Jesus better. And I will use better there, because we do know him better. We grow to know him. We grow in our knowledge of him. And praise God. And it'll never, it will never end. And so just that this whole thing is about, for me, and the advice I would give people, it's about Jesus. And the more we cleave to Jesus in these things, cleave to his nature as it's revealed, in the gospel, and it's revealed through the Holy Spirit in us, and it's revealed through simple acts of loving kindness, that all these things, they make us less judgmental. They make us want to not judge. And that would be, I've got to be honest, when I started the deconstruction process, I was judging things left and right. I would judge everything. Whether you wanted me to or not, I would judge the hell out of it. All right. And I judge less things today than I ever have, but I still judge. I still have judgments, and the Lord is still giving me room, to say, okay, all right. Are you done yet? And so just the intimacy with Jesus cures all of this to the degree. I know there's pain, but it does, knowing Jesus better as that he's in the room. And when I meant that, I wasn't being flippant. I was saying that he's our friend that never forsakes us. He, closer than a brother, and that you'll hear his voice better. What I promise is, if you apply your heart to this, you will hear the voice of the Lord better. Well, I don't want to use that word either. You'll hear the voice of love. More lovingly.
Well, better is still a valid word. I'm just saying as an adjective to say, well, you should become a better person. That's where I mean as far as vague.
I know, I got it.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I sometimes use brighter.
I like brighter because, again, that shows more loving. That was one of the things that just, I was never taught how to love in church. Growing up, I was never taught any of those things. I could show you what was wrong. I could show you all of those things. And while Jesus is still my main guy, I find a lot of resources in other sages, in Buddha, across in Egyptian lore, mythology, all of those types of things. So in my deconstruction, I was able to open up to everybody and say, okay, well, give me all of the wisdom you can. Whatever can make me a more loving person is what I want to know.
And if you become a more loving person, that means you're loving yourself too more.
Completely.
Because things are changing. Like with what Richard just said about Jesus being in the room, part of someone's deconstruction is going to be, who is that Jesus? Because the one I was told about, he's not safe enough to be in the room. And so there's some unlearning that has to happen there too. And so,
like I said, in my bedroom. That is a legitimate thing.
But that's the creepy, fake, unhealthy sexual teaching the church has done. That's got nothing to do with the authentic, true spirit, light, and life that's there and around. We've got some messed up thinking.
And Jesus isn't intimidated by all the stuff you talked about. You know that with the Egyptians and all the other stuff. He's not intimidated. We think he is so easily intimidated and fearful and jumpy at things. He gives us so much room, and he lets you go run and explore. And there are wonderful things. I still study Judaism. I study, the Kabbalah. I don't have any problems with looking at any of that stuff, because it's all pointing to Jesus to me. It's fun not to judge. I cannot tell you, on that one level, I'm such a happier person, because I have found out that it's not necessary for me to judge 24/7. And that has freed up so much of my time.
Again, I suggest you watch The Whale, and let's talk about that. Especially based on this conversation, I would definitely like your input. It rocked me. Okay, we are at the top of the hour. I'm going to go ahead and, because Carl and Laura, they actually had to go because they have another interview right now. But Carl's famous saying is be where you are and be who you are. And you can go get his book, Out into the Desert. It's available on Amazon and all of those things. Okay, done with them. Richard, any final words, and where can people find you?
Well, on Facebook, I do most of my writing. I have books actually on Facebook. Yeah, that's I put. But we also have a website, thegoodnessofgod.com, and it all has links to Facebook articles and things like that. It's got free audio teachings. It's got some of my books are there PDF free. Thegoodnessofgod.com. I have a good friend who's done a good job with the site, and so it's just there. And same for Facebook. I'd love to. I'm almost at my friend limit, but you can follow if if it resonates, and it's good to be with you. I appreciate you having me on.
It was great to have you. Thank you so much. Mike, any final words, and where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook and YouTube. Just look up Michael Zenker. I'm on twice a week with stuff. But I want to recommend 2 books. One's called Out of the Embers by Brad Jerzak. Fantastic book. If you're concerned or want to understand a healthier deconstruction. Another one that I just finished listening to by Brian McLaren called Do I Stay Christian? Fantastic book.
Love both those guys.
Oh yeah. So because of this topic, those are the 2 books I'd recommend at this point. And then definitely look at Richard's books that are online. Like there's a whole bunch of PDFs that are free, and it's like, oh my goodness, the resources are out there.
You're not alone. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much. I'm going to send you backstage and close out the show. Again, it was amazing. Thanks for your generosity of your time and wisdom. I hope you guys got as much out of this show as I did. I love talking about the struggles that we all went through and how we've come out to the other side. So don't lose hope. Don't lose love. There is healing in the trauma. There is another side. And as I say goodbye this week, as you always know, no matter what happens this week, try to walk in love. See you next week. Mwah! Bye.